How you doing, Larry?
I'm doing fine, Tim. How are things with you?
Busy.
Keeps you out of trouble. Or are you
Yes,
busy
it
in
does.
trouble?
Getting ready for the fishing tournament tomorrow and Saturday and Sunday.
Uh-huh. Okay. Expecting quite a few guests.
We've got 29 for Friday so far, and I think almost 50 for Saturday and Sunday.
Oh, great.
So I think we're going to see about a 20%, maybe more increase this year
Yeah.
than past years. Yeah,
Mhm.
pretty big payouts too.
Yeah. Good.
And then this year we'll be doing the weigh-in down at the Black River Marina at the
Mhm.
new fish cleaning station because we gotta still maintain the distancing.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes.
Hello, all.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
Hello, Michael.
I'm well, thank you.
Mike, are you coming to us from the Arboretum?
I am. This is Green Thumb.
Can folks hear me okay?
Yeah,
We
all
can,
good,
George.
Very good, thank you.
That baritone comes right through.
Hello, all.
Hi, Amy.
Amy, you did an awesome job on the AUW meeting.
Thank you. Were you there when I screwed up all the breakout rooms?
No,
I
I
had
missed
technical
that part.
glitches. Yeah, well, I don't do breakout rooms very often, and it's kind of apparent. And it was just, I usually just randomly assign when I do, and they wanted specific people assigned, and that was It was a bit of it was a mess, but we still got the information and the meeting still went on. So I'm calling that a win.
Good.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah. You didn't have to listen to the whole thing, did you? George?
No, I was in the background fixing dinner while Margaret was participating.
Oh, good.
I got to watch Diz being interviewed for the Breakfast Club tomorrow last night on Zoom. So that was fun.
I saw something on Facebook about it. Cool.
Yeah. It was interesting.
Mhm. Very cool.
She doesn't care to do that kind of stuff, but she made it.
Most people don't. It's hard to talk about yourself if you're not that, and she's just not that kind. She's just too, she's
Pretty
not
19.
that kind of person. She's a kind person that doesn't talk about herself. Let's make it that way.
Either way, it worked just fine. 39 years she's been there. That's amazing.
That's great. I didn't realize it'd been that long. Seems like, just 10 in my
She was-
mind.
She was employee number 1. She started before they even had a building. So
Wow.
yeah, been a good
for
run.
her. So she's still top of the seniority list, though. That's what's important.
That's right. Al's got her by about a week, but
Yeah, well, he's an owner. He doesn't count.
yeah, he's a good boss.
Obviously, she's lasted 39 years. Wow.
It's been good for us.
Mm-hmm.
39 years, she's never bought me a drink.
Oh, for goodness sake.
I was thinking when we got married, that was going to be one of the perks, but no. How would that look? I go, looks just fine to me.
Mhm. You look like I'm your husband.
Exactly.
But does she mix a drink at home is the better question. No.
There's no alcohol in this house anymore. I mean, we don't drink at home.
There you go.
I do have to tip her though.
You have switched locations now. Now you're somewhere with greenery and
I'm in the dining room.
yeah.
I still think he's at the Arboretum
I like that, Tim. I can deal with that.
and talking
Yeah,
to
it
his
was-
orchids.
Mhm,
We added an arboretum to the house.
mhm.
Don't tell the appraiser that, for heaven's sakes.
Too late.
I know.
Do you talk to your plants, Michael?
I do, Larry. That's my best group of friends.
As he
Well, that's-
missed them, he
They
plays.
don't talk back to you. That's the nice part about them.
They really don't thrive much either, but that's the plants I've been talking to have been the ones outside as I'm hauling them in every night. These freezes have got to stop.
Definitely. I've just given up. Like, well, I'll just replant. I'm tired of moving them.
Yeah, we didn't move them in last night, but they did all right. I think we're done with that.
That's highly optimistic.
Well, I talked to them, Tim, and they said they'd like to just gut it out. So
Okay. Because once upon a time, the Michigan State Experiment Station was right off Monroe.
right?
And the historic temperature data they collected always points to right at Memorial Day is okay. Anytime before that, it's a gamble.
Yeah, it used to be Mother's Day, but you're right, they moved it back. I remember that.
Looks like we have just about everybody from the commission, right?
Todd,
Todd. And then one empty seat.
I
room
brought
to
a
be
cat.
filled.
Okay, well, 7 o'clock, and I'll call this workshop for the planning commission to order. And just as a run up to tonight's talk, I thought it'd be a good idea, and I'll just reiterate. With some of the decisions the planning commission has to make, oftentimes we hear, a certain property, the way it's gonna be developed will affect the value of the property next to it, and so on and so forth. And I thought it'd be good to have a refresher of what goes on tax wise and valuation wise of properties. And that way, these future meetings that are coming up, you'll be able to recall what we talked about tonight to better make decisions and inform yourself. So with that, since this is a workshop, we don't really have to approve an agenda or anything, do we, Travis?
Nope, you should be good to just take off.
Okay, so do you want to do the introductions at this point?
Sure. So we have tonight with us the city's finance director and assessor, Michelle Argue. Michelle is going to kind of take the lead on the discussion tonight. I know she's put together a short presentation. And then she's going to be ready to answer some questions as the commissioners may have them. So I'll turn it over to you, Michelle.
Good
And
evening.
thank you for coming tonight, Michelle, and doing this.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes, okay.
All good.
Okay, for my presentation, I'm going to cover some of the differences between zoning and assessing and how we derive at the assessments. For you members of the Planning Commission, you're dealing with just the zoning and the planning issues. And I just want to discuss a little bit of how zoning does affect the assessing for the city. I've talked to many people since becoming an assessor, and many people have the impression that the assessing just uses the zoning on parcels, and we actually do not follow the zoning always. In the city, we have 3 different classes of property. We have residential, commercial, and industrial. And most of the time in areas that are zoned, such as residential, where you have the neighborhoods, we will often have single family houses, and yes, we'll class them residential the same as the zoning. But as far as assessing goes, we have to use the current class for the assessing, and the current class is based on the current use of the property. I know that in many towns you may see in Michigan, I know when I've traveled, I've seen where there's been commercial areas and businesses, and they start sprawling out, and the houses sometimes next to those areas will sometimes become commercial businesses. Sometimes maybe an attorney's office or something like that will open an office in one of them. So we do see that sometimes where there's crossing over of what used to be residential to possibly something like that with the commercial. And when the business moves in, that makes us change the assessing in that year from the residential use to the commercial use. There's sometimes mixed class properties also. And sometimes there'll be a couple buildings maybe on a property. And if there's 2 buildings, say on a property, and we'll just use, for example, I'll use one as residential and one as commercial. We have to look at residential building, we'll have to come up with a value, and we'll just use, for example, $100,000 comes the residential building. And then we have to look at the commercial building, and we have to value the commercial building. And if it comes up to say $200,000, the class with the most value is what the current class is for the whole property in assessing. So the example I gave you would have to be a commercial value in the commercial class. We also have vacant lots, and that's a little bit harder to determine class sometimes of. But we will look at like neighboring properties. Is it next to a residential's property, or is it next to a commercial or an industrial? And we also do then look at the zoning and see what are the permitted uses of the property. So if when they do develop it, will it become possibly commercial use, or will it be a residential use? And that helps us to determine the highest and best use of that property so that we can class it properly. Within each class, we collect information on buildings for each of the parcels to determine what type of construction, such as, is it a wood framed, is it steel framed, is it concrete framed? And then we also collect information on amenities. How many bathrooms are there? What type of heating and cooling elements are there? So we have to look at all the details on the property. And we have an assessor's manual that is created by the State Tax Commission. And we have to use that for all of our pricing. We have manuals in the assessing office, the hard copies of them, and it's also tied into our software that we use. Those values tie into all of our buildings as we value them. And commercial property is a little bit different. It's actually valued per the purpose at the current time each year of what's in the building. So we have, like downtown, we have several buildings that have the first floor, maybe the retail space, and then the second or third floors, of depending how many stories they are, may have the apartments on top. So when we do assessing, we'll actually look at the first floor and have that under commercial as a retail store. And then the next 2 stories are individual stories, and they're put in as apartment buildings. Many of the industrial buildings in the city are considered light industrial and warehouse. It's just based on the use, also similar to the commercial. When we're determining the effective age, we have to determine the effective age and the depreciation on buildings. The effective age is a judgment of the age of the building, considering was there remodeling done to the building, were there additions put onto the building? And that's, over time, how much work has been done, what's original, what's been altered and changed. So you may have, say, 100-year-old house here. We do have, some that are that old. And if it's been completely remodeled recently, then we have to look at it and we have to change the effective age from, say, 100, well, we can only depreciate down to 45 years, but we'd have it 45 years old, and we may bring it up to maybe 15 or 20 years, depending on how much work was done. But we have to just do our best guess as to what we feel the whole building is. And each year, our buildings are depreciated for a year, every year. And we do have multiple types of depreciation that we can add onto the buildings. There is an abnormal physical depreciation where the building has not been normally maintained by the property owner. So there may be some parts of the house getting in very bad shape, and it's beyond what most people would have, fixed up, kept the basic repairs on the house. But if someone doesn't, then we have to look at abnormal physical depreciation. There's also functional depreciation, and that's caused by a building not working functionally for the use of the building. And then we also have a third type of depreciation, and that's economic depreciation. The value of the building is being affected by the surrounding area for economic depreciation. For an example, if there's a house that's built in a neighborhood where most of the houses are of the same size and style, and then someone decides to build a house, say double the size of anything in that neighborhood in a different style and a higher quality build, when that house goes to sell, it may not be able to bring the value that was put into it when it was built, just because people look at it for the neighborhood it's in and may figure that it should be worth less money. So that would be like an overbuilt house. Every year, their county completes a sales study, and they create what's called a county multiplier from their sales study. And that's to adjust the assessor's manual's costs to their sales study for the county. And then we also have to do sales studies, and we do them to determine land value and to determine building value. Our land value is made up of the land value as well as land improvements. Land improvements may be items like the driveways, and there may be a shed on the property. So anything not attached to building the house may be considered a land improvement. The sales studies on the building values produces what's called an economic condition factor. We call them ECFs. And they adjust the values to our local market. The sales studies are actually a 2-year sales study at this point we're using. The state tells us what we're going to use, a 1 or a 2 year. When the market's been pretty steady and slowly increasing that, they usually use a 2 year so that we can have more information for more sales and it averages out a little bit better. They did use, though, during the time after like 2008, when we had the recession start, after a few years into the recession, we were just so far behind the market that the state let us move to a 1 year so that we were getting rid of some of the older sales that were higher values and trying to catch up more to the marketplace. This past year, for this year during the summer and the winter bills, that is based on a sales study that started on March 31st of 2018 and goes through March 31st of 2020. So unfortunately, we're always a little behind the market just because of what it takes to do the assessing year. It's not just us doing our sales studies, it's county doing their sales studies, and the county works with the state to do the studies and gets everything reviewed by them. So it's a long process to get everything, all the work done. So that's why we unfortunately do fall behind the market a little bit. In the sales studies, we only compare properties within the same class. We never compare residential properties to commercial or to industrial. The sales studies are done for each class of property, and we break down the city into areas and by types of building. We have an ECF map. I don't know if Travis does have a copy of it. Can you just display it?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. It will show you how we break down different areas of the city and to try to get them into similar properties, similar sales. There it is. That shows us our ECF tables, which shows us the ones that start with like the 04 or the 400, that is our residential classes. Numbers that start with 200 is our commercial studies, and then the 300 is our industrial studies. The residential class is broken down into multiple areas with similar sales. Since the city has several condominium units, and they are a bit different than the single families, in that most of them are built as either like townhouses or apartment style buildings. And they also have common area with common shared elements, and the single family houses usually are on their own lots. And sometimes they have amenities like shared pools and tennis courts. So they are a bit different and we treat them differently. We don't compare them to single family houses here because we have enough of them that we can compare them within their own studies. We also break them down then by area, such as lakefront condos, and then there's riverfront condos, and there's condos in other areas. So we also have to take into effect what the water effect is on the sales, and they're a bit different, obviously, than ones that are off water. In the commercial class, it's done similar to the residential class. We have different areas. We obviously have our downtown area, and then we have a number of businesses out by 196. And then there's some other businesses spread around the city in different areas where we just try to combine those together. And in the industrial class, we actually combine them all together. We do have one condominium unit, but being that there's only one and there's only 50, I think we're in the low 50s as far as how many industrial properties we have to combine them to get a single sale studies, and they very rarely sell, so that does cause us problems. And when there's not enough sales within our own unit, then, which that sometimes does happen in industrial class, then we have to look to surrounding jurisdictions for sales. And we can go to our county equalization, and they do studies, and they know of all the industrial sales each year. So we can always look at their sales and combine them with any sales that we have to try to come between the numbers. Michigan uses a 50% estimated fair market value or the assessed value. And the assessed value usually becomes the state equalized value once it goes through county and state equalization. It's only if there's some serious problem that's found at the county and state level would that not happen. The taxable value can never go above the assessed value. And it needs to equal the assessed value the year after a sale occurs that is considered an arm's length sale. And then after that year, then the taxable value is kept, and it can only go up by the rate of inflation or 5%, whichever is less. And the state's the one that calculates what the rate of inflation is each year and gives us those numbers. Okay, I don't know if any of you have any questions. I can try to answer questions as best as I can if you have some.
I guess I had a question. This is Clark. I wanted to make sure, I was looking at this, the differences between assessed value, state equalized value, and taxable value. And knowing, I think because of Hadley, the taxable value kind of has a cap on how much it can increase. But the assessed value, that has the opportunity to increase at greater rates, correct?
Yes, because it's an estimate of fair market value and we have to follow sales studies. It can increase or decrease each year, and
Yeah.
some go up, some go down.
And if somebody's home sells, we have to look at all the homes in that area. So if its assessed value is 100, so that means it's approximately a $200,000 home, correct?
Yes.
And it sells for 600,000. We don't increase the assessed value to the 300, right?
No, we cannot
Keep it at-
individually change a property due to a sale. So
it goes to the group
neighborhoods.
within that group. Okay.
Yep. And it's an average of all the sales. And we do also, every time we have a sale, we usually get a property transfer affidavit, and that gives us some information, but we also always send out a sales verification questionnaire so that we can collect information, because we have to determine whether it's a good sale to use in the studies or not.
Thank you. That's helpful to understand, because I get those questions from time to time, coffee shop questions, and even myself trying to determine that. And I thought it had to do with the groups went up and down that way versus the other. Thank you. And then when a sale occurs, then we can, readjust that taxable value by going up to that number. So, these houses that have been in somebody's family for 50 years that are along the water may sell for millions, but we can only get them to that assessed value. And then from there, that's kind of like the new baseline, so to speak. Correct?
Yeah. Yep. That's what Proposal A did. So that long-term ownership, generally, as long as the market's going up, then they can benefit from savings and taxes. And before they did that, it was very difficult for homeowners when there were ups and downs in the market, that their taxable there wasn't a taxable and assessed. It was just your tax on what your assessed essentially was. And those fluctuations were difficult for some of the homeowners. So that's why Proposal A did.
I have a question as well, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I was curious, you talked about vacant land, and I just want to make sure I heard correctly. If it's vacant land where it can't be easily determined whether that's going to be a residential property or a commercial property, you have to make your best guess at what it's going to be to come up with a fair market value. I only ask that because I think of all the property that we're going to be developing
Mhm.
in the near short term, I would think, on the southern part of town. And a lot of that has the potential to be either residential or commercial. So how do you make a decision looking into the future for fair market value? Are we going to treat that as a possible commercial property or possible residential?
We have to determine that by the highest and best use of what we believe the property is going to be. So that's just like I said, we use like looking at zoning, we look at the neighboring area, and then we just have to determine that highest and best use. And that's also it's not a principle just for assessors, it's also appraisers also use that.
Sure. So, but basically it is a judgment call.
Yes.
Using our
Mhm.
best. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Hey, Michelle, this is George. One quick question, or a couple quick questions. What does ECF stand for?
Economic condition factor. So,
Okay, very good. I never would have guessed that.
yeah. Everyone just got,
And
yeah, but yes.
so my next question is for like a short-term rental that's in a residential neighborhood, would it depend on whether it's a business short-term rental or a non-business short-term rental? Are they treated differently, and how do you look at those?
No, those are still single family houses in a residential area, and it's still a residential use, whether it's someone there every day or different people coming and going to live in the property. So as far as the rental of the property, it doesn't change. It's still a residential use, and we look at them the same as any other property, even though of course they can affect the areas. But then again, we
Thanks.
determine who's going to buy and what's their future use always for that type of property. So
So if you took a property like on North Shore, someone built 2 large homes connected by a walkway, and each one can house, I think, up to 15 people. Those were never intended to be homes, but actual businesses as a short-term rental. So those are considered taxed as actual residential homes and not the businesses that they built them for.
yeah, we actually still in residential, we still have to follow whatever the state laws are, and the state also watches the courts and tries to determine, there's always been questions about that. There's also always been questions about whether it's individuals owning houses or LLCs, whether is that commercial or, is it not a commercial venture? So, and there's still questions on that, and it's always changing by, what court cases go through each year and that, but we just have to follow the guidance that we're given on that by the state.
And that's helpful.
That would,
Thank you. That's helpful.
well, that would seem to be an excellent, and again, thanks Tim for scheduling this, because that is something that crosses over into zoning and planning commission decisions. That plays a big factor in how that's looked at, we have gone differently than what Ludington has in looking at how those properties are zoned. And in Ludington, the same home that we have next to us here in town would be deemed as a commercial property. So it does cross over. There's another area, and I don't know if we're going to get into it, Michelle, but I'm particularly curious about appraisals in our TIF districts. Because from what I can understand, there's 2 ways that are possible to look at the valuation of property in TIF districts, which of course affects much more than just assessments. But one is, if I understand, they take the base value of the property and freeze that for 20 to 30 years. And the TIF, what they can draw on, is based on the increase in property value over that baseline that's set for 30 years. Then the other one I read was where they actually have to come up with a market fair value. The market fair value is multiplied by some factor that we have, I can't remember what it's called, to come up with the assessed value. So there seems to be 2. It would seem to me, if we look at it as a question of taxation, it becomes pretty important that people understand what's happening to that tax base within our TIF districts.
Ours is set by the base year, the first year when development has been started. And then each year, it's the taxable value, the difference from the base year to the current year that we can capture. And they're,
And how are we figuring that increase or decrease? Is it, again, based on the same kind of, do we watch what sales are? I'll ask it real naively because that's about how well I understand it. But let's take the preserves. As the average price of the homes is increasing there in the preserves,
Mhm.
is that increasing the property values? Are we reassessing those properties on a regular basis to determine what that increase is that's available for the developer to take as TIF funds?
Yes, and they also benefit from the sales going on there. So if they build a house and then that's the sale, and then it comes on at the full value,
Right.
and then they get a capture. And a lot of our districts also are a certain percentage. Many of them are like 75% of
Yes.
they can
Yes.
capture. Mhm.
Yeah, and as I understand, and this isn't assessment, this is probably for another time, but as I understand, that base value is established because the revenues produced from the base value go to where they traditionally have. They're not available for TIF distribution. It's just, and those above the baseline are not available for the general fund. Those go back only to that district.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Mhm.
Travis, can you cancel the screen share?
I do want to mention that we do have large maps of these in our assessing off. If anyone wants to have a better look at it at some point.
Are they available on the website too, digitally?
We don't have it out there right now, a current one, but we can add it now into it since we just had our GIS person make it.
Thank you.
Let's see, Larry, Amy, any questions?
No, everybody asked my question.
Pretty much the same answer Amy had. I had a few questions and they've already been discussed.
Okay. So I guess for me, let's say, I guess it doesn't matter whether it's single family home or multifamilies right next to each other. And let's use what we always use, the $100,000 value for the building and land. And let's say one property, they're the exact same size properties, same building, and one of them is sold and a building is put up that's worth twice as much as the one it replaced. Does that affect the home that wasn't changed at all in value? And then conversely, let's say that home is, let's say there's a fire and it burns down and the person puts up a home half the size and value. Does that affect the other home value?
Any changes in a neighborhood obviously can affect the properties next to them. And, you know, what we determine it by is by the sales. So it's actually the people on the marketplace that are making those decisions. I mean, you know, one buyer may want one thing, another may want something else. And, you know, you just never know. So that's why we look at the sales after they've happened to drive what's happened from that and where are those values actually going.
Okay. Because I think this commission's always faced with decisions regarding whether multifamily is going next to single family homes.
Mhm.
And, you know, quite often we hear, you know, our property values are going to plummet because this is going in adjacent to us. And I think it's important this commission's able to see what the actuality is, if that's true or not true in its decision-making process.
Yeah, when you're talking multifamily homes, I mean, there's a variety, obviously things like duplexes and some of the townhouses and that for the condos and that's in residential. If you're moving into like apartment complexes, then you're talking about a commercial property. So it just depends what's being put on them.
I think
Good.
too,
Yeah.
if I may, Tim, I think too, the question that it leads to is, if you take a neighborhood like mine, where much of the new construction, I don't want to bring this up again, but much of the new construction is being built for business short-term vacation rentals, and they're pricey. They're pricey. The two that were just built are near $400,000, and in my neighborhood, I'm going to guess the median price of a house is 160, 170. So what people's opinion is, oh my God, they're going to raise my value. And where that might appear to be a good thing, most of the people in this neighborhood are retirees. They really don't want their property value to go up because that just means my taxes are going to go up. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not selling.
Yeah.
So,
At least you get the-
so they make the argument that we are subsidizing short-term vacation rentals. I mean, I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying that's, if you want coffee talk in the older established neighborhoods, that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, but that's what proposal A is there to help them, that they can only go up in their taxable value by the rate of inflation, no matter what is going on around them.
That's good to know.
And that's even capped.
Yep. And lately, we've had, inflation rates, somewhere, 1-2%. I mean, they've been very low. It's been years since we've been up anywhere near 5%. So that's good for all the people who do want to live here long-term and are on fixed incomes.
Yeah. And to Tim's point, and Tim, if I understand what you're saying, I mean, I do think we're going to get a lot of questions. We've already heard it in some of the Overton discussions. Oh my God, what's this going to do to my property value? What's this going to do to this and that? But yet, what I'm hearing is potentially nothing. Because the price of something new can't affect what you're already, back to the same analogy, back to the short-term, the new vacation rental buildings that are being built in my neighborhood. The same thing applies to the new buildings in Overton. Am I thinking the right way? I see you shaking your head. Yes, Tim, good.
I think yes, but we'll let Michelle answer.
It depends what the development is too. Like I said, I mean, there are differences, obviously. Is it going to be a residential, use? Is it a commercial use more? I have to look at the values of what gets built there. Obviously, if it ends up being where I class it commercial, then none of the residential properties are even being compared in the sales study to
Right.
it. So
Good.
not that it can't have an effect on the sales though in the area and residential properties, but I can't determine how that's going to affect that until we see the evidence of the sales.
Thank you.
I have another more general question, and that has to do with probably beyond Overton, because it was kind of started in our last meeting, and that would be Sherman Hills. We've got a potential project that someone is talking about. And out there, having looked up the company and the other properties that they sell, the homes you buy are a manufactured home that comes and is assembled in the factory and either put together there on site.
Mhm.
But someone doesn't have a deed, they have a title. So
Yep.
like, we've got manufactured homes here in town. So what's the difference between the manufactured home that's here in town and it's paying taxes, where a manufactured home out there with a title would be like the park models? They really wouldn't be paying real estate taxes, because I called the company, said, yeah, you don't have to pay real estate taxes. Once you pay your sales tax, there is no real estate tax on your property. So
Yeah.
how would we tax a large development with 150 homes that have initial sales prices between $80,000 and $120,000 each, or $100,000 each?
On trailers, the state has it where there's a payment in lieu of tax, and that's what that are in town that do pay each year. It depends on how many of the lots have the either the trailers, park models, whatever you want to call them, on them. As far as assessing goes, though, at the one that's like near the depot there, that one, most of those units in there have either like attached porches, like 3-season rooms. And there's also some of them have driveways, and some of them bring in sheds. And we actually have to tax the person living in the trailer for all those extras that are put on that property. But the state says because the trailer's there, that has to make a payment in lieu of tax.
So what's the payment in lieu of tax? I mean, there's a couple of manufactured homes in town here, and you can look them up, you know, and they've got a taxable value of $100,000. And, you know, compared to something that's that actually someone bought for $120,000. But what would it pay? Would it be paying taxes as though it were a $50,000 or $60,000 home? Or would it be paying something very small?
That's something I have to look into, because I mean, I'm not sure where the cutoff is between, is it a trailer? Is it actually a home? What is it considered? And I'm not sure where the law, I know the ones that are in the city already are just, you know, single wide trailers, you know, and then there's possibly they may build on a porch or something. So yeah, it ends up being bigger. But then, like I said, they have a payment in lieu of tax where the property owner actually has to pay for each trailer. And then anything attached on top of that, then they have to, the individual living in the trailer has to pay on it. But it's following state law. I actually have to go back and look. I don't recall exactly how much per trailer that it is. There is a calculation that everyone in the state that has those has to pay the same amount.
Okay, but that's different because someone else owns the land versus some of the others that are on like a manufactured home on a standard lot somewhere in town here is different than one that's on a lot that's owned by someone else and they pay a lot fee every month.
Yes. And I'm not sure, like I said, I don't know what like size of house where, you know, what exactly the trailer can be and what's allowed. So that's something we'd have to look into.
And that's just something to think about when we've got this potential large development coming. I mean, there is services that, you know, that we share in as a community through our taxes. And if there's 150 homes out there, you know, and there's fire and everything else going on, we want to make sure just something to understand, but thank you.
So basically what you're saying is the property owner is going to pay regular property tax, and then the people that have one of these homes pay an additional tax in lieu of property tax.
The property owner actually pays the payment in lieu of tax. And they also, like where there's like the one development has a lot of fencing and they have a pool and that, and they have some sheds, they have to pay tax on that also.
Okay. So like the depot area would
Yes.
be, yeah. Okay. Mike, you have your hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not mean to.
Okay. Well, anything else tonight, or do you need to think over and maybe send questions later on?
Tim, can I make a quick comment?
Sure, Griffin.
Just something to add to the conversation. In my experience in Saugatuck Township before I started here in the city, one of the questions we got a lot, especially with the high water levels and the erosion occurring, and just you can broaden that to any other kind of change to your property, is often people immediately want to know, what is that going to do to your taxes? What is that going to do to your property values? And something that I heard Michelle say today that I just want to highlight again, and Michelle, please stop me if I'm speaking out of turn, is a lot of times changes to your taxes, we won't know for a while because of the lag in sales studies, because of the change that occurs over time. So I think something else that could be really helpful for not only us as staff, but you all as leaders in the community is, you know, when these natural changes occur, not only to the environment, but also to neighborhoods and developments occur, you're also not going to see this change to your property values and to your taxes immediately. A lot of this plays out over time, which also makes it even more difficult to predict because you have to wait and see, how are these sales going to look? We can guess all we want about what sales are going to happen to after a development or after this change, but we really won't know for some time, and then we won't know for some time after that for that sales study to occur and then be built into your assessment. So I think that's just, again, a note for everyone is a lot of times we can guess and we can predict, and we've got really skilled people like Michelle who do this stuff for a living, and they're quite good at forecasting, but ultimately it is an educated guess, and we won't know a lot of times for some time.
That's correct.
And my hand did go back up.
Yeah, I see that.
Boy. I made all these notes. I'm looking back through. I'm really curious about this economic depreciation, or not just the depreciation that's figured in. And the only reason I ask that is, of course, we get that, I don't know if it's yearly, but we get that nice little note from the city that says, this is not a tax bill, but it's not good news. It's like, oh yeah. Well, but it shows what the assessment has increased. Is there anything do we ever get a statement of how much our property has depreciated?
No, but on residential property, it's 1 year each year. So you'll start at, the house starts at 100% as you're building, and then 99, 98. And the state sets it at, we can only go down to 45% for residential property. And then that.
So my house is 85 years old, but I get 45% depreciation. Okay.
Until you do improvements, and then I have to re-age it and.
Yeah, this arboretum was not an improvement. That was there when I bought the house.
Mhm.
And Mike, something else to think about with that is just because the value of, say, your physical house may be going down, your property values or there are other values that may be saying the same or going up. So it's always kind of boggled my mind of what a combination of factors eventually add up to your assessed and therefore your taxable value. And as we all know, and again, people absolutely have the right to do, a lot of times when really, really good things happen on people's properties and they want their property values to go up because maybe they're looking to sell soon, or vice versa, something really bad has happened, erosion, water, whatever it is, and they're hoping to see their property values go down. I always just like to remind people that's one of the many factors that go into determining what that value is going to be. So that's not to minimize whatever that positive or negative may be, but at the end of the day, you have to look at it as one piece of the puzzle.
Of course. And again, we also have to understand that people are looking at it through their own lens. The statement I made earlier still holds. Economic improvement that might lead to increased property values, which might improve city tax revenues. That's wonderful, unless you're not selling.
Yeah.
As soon as I get my 6-inch water main, I'll be happy. But with my 4-inch, I don't want to pay that extra.
And even with as much of the sales that we watch, I have to tell you that this past year with the pandemic, for the first time ever going through something like this, I would have guessed that the sales would have been even or even possibly declining. And we've seen large increases in the market, and that has been very surprising for us.
Yep, you're right. Very good. I really appreciate the time.
Yep.
And I do see Janice logged in. I don't know if she wants to ask a question, but I see you're here, Janice, just in case.
Thanks. No, I appreciate it. I'm sorry I was a little late. Things happened, but yeah, thanks for asking.
Okay. All right. Anything else? If not, we can close the workshop and thank Michelle for her time this evening.
Thank you.
And just a little primer, and I'm sure you'll have other questions, but at least now you know who to send them to. And I'm sure Michelle will get right back.
Yep, you can send it right to me or the Deputy Assessor Jennifer Williams also.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll call the workshop to a close then.
And
thank
Tim,
you,
thanks
everybody.
for setting this up.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you.
indeed, Tim.
That's
Thanks. Very helpful.
Really
Very good.
helpful.
See y'all.
All right.
Ciao.
Good night.
Watch for the fishing tournament this weekend. Big weekend for the steelheaders.
Yeah, I need people to clean fish.
need people to clean fish for the Maritime
Maritime.
Museum, so.
I just want to eat them later for fundraisers. Thank you.
And what time's the weigh-in?
The weigh-in, the participants have to be in line no later than 3 p.m. And depending if they limit out early, it could be, they could come in and want to weigh as soon as 11, 12 o'clock, but I'm gonna
Sure.
set a time of, they can't get in line earlier than 1:30. So between 1:30 and probably 4 o'clock, we'll have that all done and then scored tomorrow. And Saturday and Sunday will be the same program.
Fantastic. Well, good luck. Hopefully the weather's like it's been today and tomorrow, because it's been beautiful.
It's supposed to be perfect, so we should see a great weekend.
Good.
All right, well,
Let's
good
be
night,
done, yeah.
everybody.
Good night.